We left off last time right in the middle of this epic confrontation between Jesus and Legion, this man with thousands of demons inside him. The confrontation was epic. The battle was anything but epic. It lasted about 1 second, and it was over. The demons were sent off screaming, as usual, for mercy. This section of Mark is all about the power of Christ's Word. Jesus does, he talked about that in the parables, and now Jesus does 4 miracles to show that power, to make it so we can see the magnificence of the power of His Word. The first of the 4 miracles was the calming of the storm with a word, right? He gets in the storm, just one word, stop, and it stops. The second miracle now is the one we saw last time, and that shows Jesus' power over evil. Jesus drove out an entire army of demons. Look at verse 13, Mark 5:13. The unclean spirit came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. That might have been the mightiest display of the awesome power of God so far in the Gospel of Mark. It was awesome, right? If you were here last time, I mean, it was just, we were in awe of the power of Christ. So, is this a story about Christ's power? Absolutely. Absolutely. But after verse 13, once you hit verse 13, the demons are gone. The battle's over. The battle's won. And yet, the story's not over, right? We still got 7 more verses. So, what happens in verse 13 is the focus shifts from the battle with the demons to the man. Why? Why all this focus on the man? Because this is a story about mercy. It's about mercy. That's how Jesus saw it. That's how He characterized it at the end. If you go down to verse 19, look what it says. He says to the man, go home and tell your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how He has had, what? Mercy on you. Right? That's how Jesus sums up this whole event. It's interesting. He doesn't say, go home and tell your family how much power I showed over the demons. He says, go home and tell them about the mercy. So this is a story about mercy. What is mercy? Let's just define it real quick. Mercy is the goodness and kindness of God expressed toward those in misery or distress. Okay? It's the kindness and goodness of God expressed toward those in misery or distress. So if you are nice to someone, that's kindness. If you're nice to someone who's in trouble, that's mercy. You see that? Mercy relieves misery. So this passage is about 2 attributes of Christ, His power and His mercy, both. And that's just such a beautiful combination of attributes of God, isn't it? His might and His mercy. Because mercy is useless if it's not backed up with power. And power is dangerous if it's not governed by mercy and controlled by mercy. If you have someone who's mighty but not merciful, he'll hurt you. But if you have someone who's merciful but not mighty, then when you're in trouble, he'll want to help you, but he won't be able to because he doesn't have enough power. You need both might and mercy. What good would it be if, when you were in trouble, if Jesus just felt really sorry for you, but He couldn't do anything about it? That would be useless. Jesus has infinite mercy and omnipotent power to show that mercy. And so I've titled this message, this passage, Mighty Mercy. Mighty Mercy. That's what this is about. Now, if mercy is helping somebody in misery, somebody in trouble, and Jesus wants to put on display the extremes of His mercy, He wants to show how merciful He is, then He needs to find somebody who's really, really, really miserable, right? To show how much mercy He has. And I think this guy qualifies. I think this guy might win the prize for the most miserable, wretched example of a human being ever. We can look at his misery under 3 headings, I think. That's what this passage gives us. First, he was wild. He had completely lost control of himself. Verse 2, when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an unclean spirit came from the tombs to meet Him. It says with an unclean spirit, that means the demon had control over him. Even to the point where the demon speaks out of the guy's mouth. He controls the guy's voice box and forces the guy to harm himself. Verse 5, night and day among the tombs and in the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. So he's mutilating himself, and not only could he not control himself, he couldn't be controlled by others either. Verse 3, this man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained, hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Literally, no one was strong enough to tame him. And normally that's a word, we talk about taming wild animals, not people. But they're not treating him as a human being. He really is an animal at this point. He's worse than an animal. Because wild animals, you can tame some of them. This guy, nobody could tame him. No one could control him. He couldn't control himself because he was under the control of demons who were tormenting him. You read stories about people like Richard Wurmbrand, who was tortured in unspeakable ways by the communists in Romania on just a constant daily basis for 14 years because of his faith. I read his book, and I can't even imagine going through what he went through even for one day, much less 14 years. But even worse than being tortured by communist prison guards would be to be tortured by demons who can not only hurt your body, but can bring unspeakable terrors into your mind. He cut himself with stones. I've known people who cut themselves, but they didn't use stones. They usually use sharp blades that make a clean cut in a controlled setting. What this gouging your flesh with rocks is just a whole nother level. It's just mutilation. And his wounds would have gone unattended, no Band-Aids, nothing to put on them. Beings that hated him were in full control of his body and his mind. So that was the first category. He's wild, out of control. Second category is disgrace. The demons had him running around naked, so not only is he exposed to all the elements without any protection, but he's humiliated. Utter, complete humiliation. Everyone despises him. They consider him a monster, which he was, really. He's like an animal. He's screeching like a wild animal. He's living in caves like an animal. He's going without clothes like an animal. The demons are destroying his very humanity and his dignity. The third category was insanity. In the Talmud, the Jews had 4 categories to mark if somebody was insane. This guy matches all 4. So he's insane. Insanity is that's when a person is detached from reality. That's what insanity is. When you're detached from reality. You see things that aren't there. You hear things that aren't there. You're living in a world that doesn't exist. The real world is over here, and the world you're living in is over here, and they're not the same world. That's insanity. And it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing not to have control of your body. Even worse, not to have control of your mind. Worse yet, to have demons in control of both. His body was a mass of lacerations and infections, scar tissue and scabs. His mind, a delirium of constant pain and insanity. His existence was just an absolute unbearable agony. If Jesus is looking for a supremely miserable human being that needs mercy, he found one. He found like the king of misery here. Now imagine what it was like for this man. I think we're getting a little bit, are we getting a little ringing? Maybe just to dial it just a bit. Imagine what it's like for this man. Put yourself in his shoes or in his bare feet or whatever. You're living in these caves. You're miserable. You wish you could die, but the demons keep you alive so that they can keep on tormenting you and torturing you. Every time you move your body, it hurts. And when the demons make you get violent with somebody, it's just pain is just blinding. Beyond that, you're in a state of constant fear all the time. Thousands of demon voices in your head. You just want to scream and tell them, stop, just be quiet, stop. But they won't stop. You know, I heard this last week of a mass murderer who when they caught him, they searched his apartment and they found that he had poured cement in all of his drains and in his toilet. And there was another man who had been delivered from demons. He used to have demons in him, and he was delivered. And he heard that news report, and he says, "Oh, I know why he did that." He says, "Because for me, the demons would always talk to me through the drains, and this guy, he would do anything to just shut them up. But this man, there's nothing he could do. They're inside him. Thousands of demons inside him." I imagine if you're this guy, you just wish you could have just 10 seconds of relief. Just 10 seconds of peace. But it never comes, ever. Even when you're asleep, it goes to sleep, and the night terrors are just as bad as your daytime terrors. And so one day you're out, you're walking around, you're picking through some garbage, trying to find something to eat, trying to survive, and at that moment you look down and you see some movement down on the shore. There's a boat. Some guys are getting out of that, and before you know it, you're running down there. You're going to attack. Every step of your running, and your bloody feet hitting the ground is just shooting pain, but you can't control your body, and you know it's going to be a violent confrontation with these 13 men down there, and that's just going to ratchet up the pain, but you're out of control. You can't help it. You're going down there. And so you're running as fast as you can. You get down there. Suddenly, you're on your face in the dirt at the feet of one of these 13 men. And he's just standing there, and you're screaming at him so loud, it's scratching your throat, it's hurting your throat. And in the chaos of what's happening inside you, you don't even know what's going on. You can't really follow what's being said, but there's some kind of an argument going on between this man and these demons inside you, and it's going back and forth, and you're just in this delirium, and he's just standing there. This guy who seems to be the leader of this group, he's just standing there. He's not afraid. He's not running away. He's calm. He's poised. And has this commanding authority. And you can't understand what's being said. But finally you do make out one word, and it's this word, go. And in that instant, the maddening cacophony of voices and chaos in your head, it's gone. The feelings of fear and terror, gone. For the first time since you can remember. All the tumult inside. Now, perfect peace. Just like the wind and the waves in that storm right before this. The storm inside this guy was probably worse than the storm out there on that lake. And Jesus stills both of them in an instant with a word. Go, and it's over. Now, if you're this man, what would be going through your mind at this point? You look up into Jesus' eyes, and for the first time since you can remember, somebody is looking at you, another human being is looking at you like you're a human being instead of an animal. Looking at you with something other than revulsion and disgust, actually with mercy and compassion and love. This man cares about you. He loves you. He extends his hand and you take it and he helps you up and you're amazed. You're like, I told my hand to go up and it went up, and I told my feet to stand and they stood. My legs, I have control of my body. I can move the way I want. Now some guy's walking up behind you and you're like, what do we and then you realize he's putting a garment around you, and Jesus says to him, "Thanks, Andrew," and you realize this guy just went down to the boat and got his extra tunic and he's putting it around you, and now you're clothed. You're being treated with dignity, like an actual person and not an animal. And now you're dressed. A little bit Jewish for your taste since you're a Gentile, but that's all right. It's way better than nothing. And now this man who just drove all these demons out of you with this one word, he starts talking to you. And you're answering him. You're having a conversation with him. He's asking a question, you're speaking back, and you're asking questions, and you're just a regular person now. How's that for a before and after picture? Pretty amazing. I mean, you know on TV when they sell the diet programs, they always give you the before and after. The before picture usually looks something like, the guy's, and he's frowning, and he's got his stomach. And then the after picture, he looks like some kind of bodybuilder or Olympic athlete or whatever. Some before and after pictures are more impressive than others. This one, I think, is one of the most astounding before and after pictures ever. The transformation is amazing. And it wasn't 6 months on the program, or 8 weeks or 8 days. It's like instantaneous. In the before picture is a twisted, deranged, maniacal, perverse, pathetic, miserable, walking freak show. Now look at the after picture, verse 15. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been demonized with the legion sitting there, clothed, and in his right mind. That's the after picture. And in the Greek, there's 3 participles that describe that. That's why I put it in the 3 categories. First, sitting, instead of wild and out of control. Second, clothed instead of naked and disgraced. Third, in his right mind instead of the insanity and delirium of his previous state. This is what it looks like when the mighty mercy of Christ meets the most extreme misery. Jesus doesn't just drive away the evil. That's not enough. The story keeps going past verse 13 because that's not enough. He doesn't just want to drive away evil. He wants to restore what the evil had destroyed in this man. And Jesus went beyond just restoring his humanity too. When it says he's sitting with Jesus, that's the terminology of a disciple. He didn't just make him back into a human being. He made him a disciple. And not just a disciple, also a preacher. Look at verse 20. So the man went away and began to preach in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. NIV says tell. The word is preach. Preach. Same word used to mark John the Baptist preaching and Jesus preaching. Jesus made this guy a preacher. Just like that, he's a preacher. Now, I don't think any church would hire this guy. No seminary degree, 1 day of training, terrible reputation, worst resume ever. But Jesus calls him to be a preacher anyway. He made him a preacher, and not just a preacher, but also a missionary. It says he preached all over the Decapolis, this whole 10-city region of cities in that area. He's a missionary. Man, that is a very impressive before and after picture. The most extreme example of human wretchedness was no problem at all for Jesus' mighty mercy. No problem at all. And what does that mean for us? What does that mean for us? What does it say about the needs that you have in your life for mercy? They're no problem, right? However messed up you think your life is, it's no problem. It's no match. All your problems are no match for Jesus' mighty mercy. If you can handle this guy, you can easily handle anything in your life. And let me just throw this in. When you think of receiving mercy, you say, where do I need mercy? Where's my life messed up? The mercy relieves misery, but don't think of your misery in your life just in terms of physical misery. Usually we think of our misery as like, oh, my aching back, and I got this physical problem, and I got this financial problem, and I got this. That's not the main issue with misery. The main issue with misery is evil in our hearts and the havoc that the sin in our hearts causes, right? You'd be a lot better off to have cancer and a stroke and paralysis and chronic pain in your body than to have the effects of sin on your soul. That's worse. That's where the real misery, human misery is. And that's where Jesus' mercy comes in. In fact, let's talk for just a minute about the effects of sin on the soul, because that's what we need to understand here. Because this is what this passage is teaching us. At the moment of temptation, it always seems like what Satan offers you is better than what God is offering you, right? That's why we give in to temptation. That's what temptation is. Satan offers immediate satisfaction right now. Whether it be the satisfaction of pleasure or the satisfaction of revenge or whatever it is. Some kind of immediate satisfaction. The reason we cave into temptation is always because we want something right now. Right? We want some satisfaction right now. But if you look a little further into the future, then you can see that it's not so satisfying. The momentary enjoyment of sin is very momentary, but what you end up long-term with is horrible. What you end up with long-term is horrible. If you want to know where sin leads, any sin, if you want to know where sin leads, what Satan's trying to do in your life when he tempts you to sin, if you want to know, look at this man. This is what Satan wants to do to you. It's the reason for all temptations in your life. Satan wants you to become more and more like this maniac. Every temptation you ever face is designed to move you in the direction of misery. That's where all sin leads. It's the same three categories as this man. Satan wants to push you, first of all, into the direction of loss of self-control, so that your world becomes wild. Your spirit goes out of control. You're filled with anxiety. You're filled with stress and restlessness, and everything in you is a tumult, and you got a storm going inside you. That's what Satan wants to do. God's plan, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside quiet waters, and he restores my soul. And Jesus said, come to me and I'll give you rest. That's God's plan for you, rest and calm. And so Satan wants to do the opposite of that. He wants to push you towards destroying the peace in your life. And all sin is designed to do that. All sin is designed to destroy the peace in your life. Secondly, Satan wants to bring you disgrace into your life. He wants to disgrace you. Now, you might think, not me. I never go running around naked in cemeteries. Well, maybe not that, but Satan is going after your dignity. He's going after your humanity. He wants to get you to live like an animal so that you just act on impulse. You have an appetite. Oh, I want to eat this, I'll eat it. I want to do this, I'll do it. I don't feel like doing that, I won't do it. I want to sleep in, I'll skip my devotions. I'm just going to go on impulse, the impulses of my body, and live like an animal instead of being governed by my spirit. That's what Satan wants to do. He wants to take away your humanity. Every temptation is designed to move you in the direction of disgrace and away from honor and dignity of humanness. Thirdly, every temptation is designed to push you in the direction of insanity instead of in the direction of a sound mind. Sin always clouds spiritual realities and deceives your mind so that you're not living in the real world. That's what sin does. Satan wants you to live in a world where there's no judgment day. You don't have to worry about answering for your actions. That world doesn't exist. He wants you to live in a world where the pleasures of sin are sometimes worth it. It pays off. That world that's not the real world. Satan wants you to live in a world where God is not the most important factor in making a decision. He wants you to live in a world where self-esteem is more important than God and loving Him. He wants you to live in a world where you can sow to the flesh and not reap destruction. He wants you to live in a world where you have the right to withhold forgiveness in some cases and hold a grudge even after the person has repented, and that's okay. He wants you to live. All of that is a fantasy world. None of that is the real world. If you're living like that, you're insane to that degree. Satan can convince you that world exists. He can move you towards insanity. Even though you seem perfectly lucid to everyone around you, and you have high intelligence, you're still detached from reality, which is what Satan wants, because reality is where God lives. And Satan doesn't want you anywhere near there. So that's where all sin leads, and all of us have gone down that path countless times, haven't we? We've all sinned. We've all given in to temptation. So you think of how many times you've done that. It's like, is there any hope for me? Is there any hope for us? With all the damage we've done to our souls by giving in to what Satan wanted? Well, it depends on how we respond to Jesus' mighty mercy. So how does the community respond? Let's first look at how the community responds to Jesus' mighty mercy, and then we'll see how this man responds. Verse 14, those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. So the hired hands who had been tending all these pigs, now they don't have anything to do. They're out of work. So they say, we'll go tell everybody. And they don't just go tell the owners of the pigs. They have a sense that what happened just now is really, really big. It's something everyone needs to know about. And so they go tearing all through town, across the countryside, like Paul Revere, just running around saying, the demons are gone, the demons are gone. This guy from Israel, you wouldn't believe. Hey, I mean, he just did and you wouldn't believe what he did to Crazy Harry. I mean, you got to see that. And I don't know if that's exactly what they said, but whatever they said, it was enough to get all the people to drop whatever they were doing and travel all the way out to this and see what was going on. They had to investigate. Verse 14. The people went out to see what had happened. And so here comes all the people, and they come to the crest of the hillside, and they look down, and they look down into the water, and the whole Sea of Galilee looks like one giant bowl of pig soup. There's all these pigs floating everywhere. Carcasses, 2,000 pig carcasses floating in the water. But that wasn't even the most astonishing part. It doesn't even say anything about that part. What's really blew them away and amazed them was what happened to Crazy Harry, or Larry the Legion, or whatever they called the guy. And the point here is that this demented, deranged, dangerous, demonized madman was now calm, lucid, friendly, well-dressed, sitting there, chatting with Jesus. Not a threat to anybody. And when they see that, they want some more details. They say, tell us. So they asked the eyewitnesses, verse 16. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demonized man and told about the pigs as well. They're mainly talking about the demonized man. They throw in the thing about the pig, but they got to hear the story about this man. And they tell the whole story. And so now they have the full, and now they know everything that happened. These people in the community. So what are they going to do? How are they going to respond to mighty mercy? Throw a ticker tape parade? I mean, after all, Jesus just solved their worst crime problem. He just delivered them from the biggest problem they had in their entire country. This threat that they had no power to restrain. They could not deal with it. So what do? Do they hoist Jesus up on their shoulders and carry him through town and sing, "For he's a jolly good fellow," and declare a National Jesus Day holiday, and everybody takes a statue in Times Square of Jesus? Or maybe at least like just a thank you? Or better yet, do they see the transformation of this man and then cry out for salvation of their own souls? Say, "Do for us what you did for him. Take the evil out of us and save us." Do they plead for that? They do plead with Jesus, but not for that. Look what they plead for. Verse 17. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. Get out. This is mercy rejected. Now you read that, you think, why would anybody reject mercy? Because with Christ's mercy comes Christ. And that's scary. You can't have his mercy without having him. And having him is scary. Look at verse 15. When I say that it was fear, verse 15, when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been demonized with the legion sitting there, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. They rejected Jesus because they were afraid. So what are they afraid of? Well, a few things. They just met somebody, first of all, they just met somebody who is orders of magnitude more powerful than the most powerful forces they had ever experienced, these demons. That's scary. That's scary. They don't know this man. This Jesus. He's unpredictable, definitely uncontrollable. I mean, they had their lives arranged around this demonized man, but this person, who knows what he's going to do? But scarier than all that, I think, is this. This man, Jesus, is holy. He's holy. This is a man who manhandles evil. And that's great when it comes to the maniac's evil, but what about my evil? Jesus has that much power, and he's got this zero tolerance policy about evil. What's going to happen when he goes to work on me? Starts tearing into my evil in my heart. Now, I don't know if the people consciously thought this through that way. They might not have even understood why they were so afraid of Jesus. But sinful mankind has an innate sense of fearing the holy because deep down we know we have a serious problem of evil in our hearts. We are shot through with sin. Holiness is like fire, and evil in our hearts is like dry kindling, and you just got to be careful how close you get to the holy when you have sin in your heart. Jesus is a light, and it's great for him to shine his light on that deranged, demonized guy in the tombs over there, but not on my darkness. But you can tell by looking at him that he's not the type that's going to pick and choose where he's going to shine his light. John 3:19, this is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but men loved darkness instead of the light because their deeds were evil. That's our natural condition. You know, people are forever complaining about the existence of evil. People mock God. They say, there can't be any God. God doesn't exist. If there were a God, he wouldn't allow all this evil and these horrible things to happen and blah, blah, blah. And they pontificate about whether God exists. And they're so upset about the existence of evil. And then the Lord comes and provides a solution to the evil in their hearts. And they're like, no thanks. I guess they're not so anti-evil after all. They're just like, please leave, just like these people. People want mercy from God. They want God to help them out in a time of trouble. When I've got physical distress, financial distress, I got this trouble in this relationship. God, help me, please help me. And they want his mercy in those moments. But they don't want any mercy for their spiritual uncleanness. Take me out of this financial pinch, God. Help me out with my health problems. Fix my hard marriage. Take away my temporal troubles. But keep your hands off my heart. Don't go ripping away evil from inside me because that's going to hurt. And so they asked Jesus to leave. Well, how does he respond? What does Jesus say? They say, leave. Does he say, I don't have to leave. I created the whole world. I'll leave when I please. No, listen. Verse 17. The people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. Verse 18. As Jesus is getting into the boat. Well, that was easy. They don't really have to twist his arm, do they? They just began to say, Jesus, would you leave? And he's already climbing into the boat. This is just like the way Jesus responded to the demons begging. Remember, the demons begged, please, let us go to the pigs. Okay, go. And now, and then they end up in the abyss. Now Jesus says, these people say, please leave. And the merciful, mighty Son of God leaves their region. Sometimes the harshest punishment God can give is to answer our prayers. Be careful about holding God at arm's length, because you may wake up one day and he's gone. He left. The word beg is used, the same Greek word for beg is used 3 times in this passage. First, the demons begged to go into the pigs. Then the people begged for Jesus to leave. Now there's a third begging that's going to happen. Verse 18. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demonized begged to go with him. Finally, somebody begs for something good, right? Somebody's got a good motive. He's not like the others. They want Jesus to leave. This guy can't be close enough to Jesus. He's like, I got to be with you. I'll leave everything. I'll leave my home, my family, everything I know. I just want to be with you. Let me be a disciple. He doesn't care that Jesus is a Jew. He doesn't care that Jesus is about to go on a boat over to Israel in this strange, different culture, and he's a Gentile. He doesn't care about any of that. He just wants to be with Jesus. Wow, what a wonderful thing to see, right? And what does Jesus say to this guy? The demons begged for what they wanted. Jesus said yes. The people begged for Jesus to leave. Jesus said yes. Now this guy begs for what he wants, to be with Jesus. Verse 19, Jesus did not let him. Jesus finally says no to something. The one guy who's got a good motive for his prayer gets a no. And it's in the continuous tense in the Greek. The guy kept asking, come on, Jesus, come on, let me go, please. Come. And Jesus could not be persuaded. No. No. Why? Why does he say yes to the demons and to the evil people, and then he says no to this good motive? Here's why. Because all 3 requests were for something that wouldn't be good for them. All 3 are asking for something that wouldn't be good for them. And Jesus punishes the demons by saying yes. And he punishes those people by saying yes. And he blesses this man by saying no. Never second guess God's yeses and nos. He knows what he's doing. He shows mercy. Saying no to this man was just yet another expression of mercy. Jesus wasn't done showing this guy mercy after delivering him from the demons and giving him clothes and everything else. He's still showing him mercy now. He's saying no to a bad prayer. He's saying no to not an evil prayer, but a prayer that wouldn't have been what was best for him. It was best. It was mercy to make this guy stay. Now, I'm sure it didn't seem like mercy at the time. This guy has to stand there. I mean, you imagine that. He has to stand there on the shore and watch Jesus sail away. And now he's left there alone in this place that had just completely rejected Christ. Right? And Jesus gives him a task. Probably the most difficult task known to mankind. Reach an unreached, completely unreached people group where there's not one single believer. And I want you to be a missionary and go and reach that unreached people group. And the guy he's known Christ for a matter of hours. He has no help, no training, no church, no Bible, no materials, no financial support. Everyone who knows him hates him. And he's got to reach this community as a missionary. Now, leaving that guy there did not feel like mercy. But here's what we need to understand about Christ's mercy. It doesn't always feel like mercy. It doesn't feel like mercy. But reality and how things feel are 2 different things a lot of the time, right? Take Christ's mercy as it comes. Take it as he gives it. Don't try to formulate in your mind what mercy needs to be. He decides what's merciful. Never fall into the foolishness of trying to dictate to Jesus what form his mercy needs to take in your life. He's the author of mercy. He knows everything. He decides what's best for you. He decides what's truly merciful. And in leaving this guy, he showed him wonderful mercy by giving him a high calling as a preacher and as a missionary. And at the same time, Jesus was showing mercy to that whole community by leaving them a missionary, right? They thought they got rid of Jesus. They didn't. They didn't. He left a missionary there. Verse 19, an effective missionary. Jesus said, "Go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." And so the man went away and began to preach in the whole Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. Well, how did the people respond to his preaching? Verse 20. He went away and began to tell in the whole Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. There's that response again. You've seen that again and again in Mark. Everyone's always amazed at Jesus. Everybody is always amazed at Jesus. Does that mean they were saved? No. Nobody ever went to heaven because they were amazed at Jesus. Nobody. Amazement is not the same thing as faith. Amazement raises its eyebrows and then walks away. And that we're going to see in the book of Mark, that is not adequate. Faith bows the knee and obeys. That's what we see in this man. That's what he does. He obeys what Jesus tells him. Jesus says stay, he stays. He says go tell about, he goes and tells. He obeys. Finally, somebody obeys Jesus. So what does the mighty mercy of Christ mean for you? First, I'll just close with this. First, never forget who the source of mercy is, Jesus Christ. Sin leads us into a dark, miserable place, and Christ is a solution. Some of you might be in that dark place right now. Maybe you dabbled in evil and you got pulled in and you got pulled under and you're trapped, enslaved by some evil, damaged. Your mind isn't right. You're alienated, alone, isolated, defiled, broken, violated. Satan has taken you quite a distance down the path towards being like this man, towards destruction. If that's you, there's a way out. There's restoration. Jesus Christ has the power to pull you out of that darkness, and he's the only one with that kind of power, and he's the only one with that kind of mercy. He's got the mighty mercy. Don't look to any other source, just to Christ. Just to Christ. Secondly, don't reject his mercy like these people did. Every time we choose to sin, we're choosing a path of misery and we're rejecting mighty mercy. Don't do that. We're choosing to take steps down the path of destruction, away from mercy. Every time we choose to sin, we're being like these people. We're saying to Jesus, get out. Get out. Please leave. Learn to treasure his mercy. His mercy is scary. It might come in forms you didn't really want. And it will mean Jesus is going to tear into your heart and rip evil out, and that can hurt. And his mercy might come in the form of a really hard calling, a very difficult task. But don't let any of that scare you. Take his mercy as it comes. Take his mercy as it comes. That's number 3. Going Satan's way always leads to restless, chaotic, exhausting life. What Jesus offers is profound rest, even in a difficult calling. And then finally, when you see the glory of Christ, don't just walk away amazed. Bow the knee and obey. Let's pray. Lord, we bless your name for your mighty mercy. Thank you that it's mighty, powerful enough to help us. Thank you that it's merciful, full of tender compassion. Oh, what a beautiful combination of attributes. Teach us to love that and to look to that alone for our salvation. We pray it in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.